Do the brakes on your Farmall Cub tractor not work properly? Maybe they're like this tractor where one doesn't go down hardly at all and the other one goes all the way. They should work properly so that they both move at the same distance. They should have the same amount of pedal there. Or maybe when you press your brake pedals, they just don't slow the tractor down at all. That would mean that you need to replace the brakes or do a brake adjustment on your tractor. So in this video, I'll go over all the steps so that you can make that repair on your own. The first step is to remove the tire. I already have my wheel chocks on the other one and I have it properly jacked up in the back, so we're ready to take it off. Now before I go all the way, I am going to get a little bit of help so that this wheel doesn't get away from me. And you should do the same as well. I'm electing to remove the fender from my tractor. If you want to remove the fender from yours as well, then you would just remove these two bolts right here and then the big bolts that are back here. Not these four, those don't need to be removed. So we remove both of these at the bottom. Oops. And then I've got the big ones in the back already loosened, so it should just pull right off. Like that. My fender's off, so now we're ready to get into the brake assembly. These techniques that I'm showing you today do apply to both Cub and Cub Lowboy tractors. I'm just removing the bolts here on this cover. Notice on my tractor where you can see how much the gear lube has leaked here. That's likely a sign that the gasket behind this cover is damaged. So we'll take that off, and when we put it back together, we'll definitely replace that gasket. Also notice back here, I did take that bracket off that holds the drawbar for ease of this process. So I got one more bolt to get off up here. There we go. Okay. And then we'll see this. Woo! Comes off like that. Very good. It came off a little easier than I pictured it to come off. Okay, there we go. You can see that part of the gasket stuck here, part of it's stuck here. We'll get that all cleaned up and replaced. I'm going to pull this cotter pin out so that we can get this brake rod here out. Now let my cotter pins out. I'm going to pull this pin out. There we go. I'm pulling out my last bolt here. There's 9 all the way around here. There's also a dowel at the top and a dowel at the bottom, which you'll need to pay attention to when you pull this assembly out. Now you can see that I have a cherry picker hooked up to my brake assembly here. You wouldn't necessarily need to do that in your own shop. I did that because this is very heavy and I just don't want it to fall and hurt myself when it comes out. If you have more strength than I do, you might be able to just manhandle that off of there and not need the cherry picker. But I'm using one today. So now I have everything hooked up and I'm ready to pry this out of there. I'm going to pry at the top here and then pry down. Whoa, there it goes. Okay, pry down at the bottom. Did you see that grass come out of there? Look at that. You'll often find that in your tractor. There's no seal in it, so that happens a lot. I'm trying to pry the band brakes off of the drum here. Here we go. Got it free a little bit. See if we can just wiggle it off the rest of the way. There we go, it's coming. Perfect, just like that. I'm driving this pin out so that the band shoe will come off so that we can replace, there we go, we got both of them, so we can replace that. Notice here how worn this is. You can see that it's almost down to the rivets, very, very worn. This is what the new one looks like so you can compare. Huge difference, so we're gonna put this new band on. On the new brake shoe here, there's a little bit of glip doll on the end, which makes it difficult for this to slide in here. It won't slide in there, it's tight. So if yours is the same way, you'll need to just use a grinding wheel to just take off a little bit of the end there. Just go, tap gently, you don't need to take a lot off until it will fit in that portion. That might have been enough. Let's see. Yep, that one will slide in there good. Let's try the other way too. Yeah, it's a good fit. Okay, we're ready to put this in now. I'm ready to pound this pin into here so that the brake shoe assembly will stay onto the brake lever. Now I'm only going to do this back pin, not the front pin as well. So we'll put the back pin on there so that the shoe is connected, and then we'll push it down over that cradle assembly, and once it's in there, then we'll put this last pin in. We'll need that amount of give to wiggle it down in there in a little bit. So first I'm going to pound this pin in there and make sure it's lined up. There it's going. There, it should be good. I'm just going to take a look at it on the bottom and make sure it's... Nope, need to go a little bit more. Okay. There we go. Looks good. Perfect. We're ready to put the brake, the disc band here onto the brake assembly. Now this is very directional, and you'll notice that there's a pin here at the bottom that has to match up with this hole right here. This is directional, and you need to make sure that you get your band in here going the right way. So you can see that that kind of sets in here. I'm going to turn it this way. There we go, because we're trying to get this pin to line up to that hole, okay? And then also you can see that this runs parallel here, and that this actuator is going to operate properly. You can also see that this pin is going to connect here, and then it's going to go in right. It is possible to get this in going the wrong way. It's possible to get this going in over here, and it won't work. It has to go in a very specific way. So I have this set on here. I'm going to try to start it there with my hands. I got everything lined up here so that's going to go into the hole. And then very gently, I'm just going to use a brass hammer to tap this in there. You work very gently, don't beat it really hard. Getting this final pin in here is quite the challenge. What we ended up doing was taking screwdrivers and putting them all the way around the band, prying them in there so that the band could tighten up the circle so that the pin could come in here properly. There may be another way to do it besides screwdrivers, but this is the way that I chose to do it, and it's quite the challenge, and if you want to do it the same way, that's what I would recommend for you to do. So you got to drive them all the way in there and keep working it until this pin is ready to go in. I have my pin partially in there, and I'm going to drive it in there the rest of the way. There it goes. It's almost flush. I'll go a little bit more. Oops. Okay, that looks good in there. Might take it a little bit more, but then we'll see that this is flush in there, and we're ready to move on to the next step. I want you to notice down here that I have all of the grass and dust that was inside of this portion cleaned out. We'll clean it out on the tractor too before we put it all back together. Then I'm going to use this abrasive to clean this surface. There's no gasket here, so we want to make sure that it's really clean before we put it back in the tractor. Also, the end that's on the tractor needs to be clean as well. Now, my shaft here is not greasy. That means that my seal is working properly. If yours is greasy or oily, then you would want to replace your seal. You can purchase a replacement seal from Steiner, and it would go on your tractor here. If you're working on this side of the tractor, you would have to take the trumpet housing out in order to replace that seal. It's a pretty detailed job, but it is important, even though it's just a small part. If you do the brakes on the other side of the tractor, then it's really easy to replace the seal there. The tractor's offset, and it's easy to get to the brakes on the other side. So with that, I'm going to finish cleaning up this surface, and we'll be ready to put it into the tractor. I'm tightening up my last bolt here. This was quite the struggle to get this brake compartment into the rear of the tractor here. Remember, there's two dowels, one at the top and one at the bottom. Also, there's a pin from the actuator that is here in the bottom that has to insert properly. We use this narrow rod to slide in there and move the actuator so that it would go into place while it was all together here and worked at it and got it together. I did have some help pushing that together, and if you have a friend that can help you, that would probably make the task go a lot easier, because it's hard. There's a lot of moving parts as you're putting it together that you all have to get connected up. So if you have help, it'll go easier. So with that, we'll finish tightening up these bolts, and then we'll move up here to the gasket. You can see that this is leaking, so we're going to replace that gasket next. There's my last bolt off of this cover here. And then we're going to pry it off so that we can replace that gasket. You can definitely tell it's leaking by all this grease that's out of here. There we go. Just like that. I have my new gasket here, and I'm ready to put it on. You can see I've cleaned up this surface as well as this one, to get any remains of the old gasket off. While you got this off, inspect the bearing. Mine seems absolutely fine, so there's no reason to replace it, but if yours did, then that's how you would get in there and replace it. So with the gasket in there, I'm going to start the one bolt, there we go, and move all the way around. There we go. I'm putting some gasket sealant on both sides of this part here. We had a lot of leakage on this before, especially towards the bottom, so we just want to make sure that we get a really good seal because of the amount of oil and grease that is in contact here. I already put it on the part right here on the assembly on the tractor. Just going to finish up this cover, and then we'll be ready to put it on. I have my new gasket ready. All these gaskets do come in a complete gasket set for the task here, available from Steiner. So you can purchase them all together. Okay. There's that. I'm going to line up my gasket on here. Line it up with the holes, because I got that gasket material that'll rest there. And then I'm going to put this straight on, like so. I'm going to start at the top with my bolts and work all the way around. There we go. Okay, I got my pin in here. You move this with the clevis here in order to get your adjustment proper for your brake pedal. Be sure to hook that back up, and you can play with it, turn it in and out to adjust it properly. You want both of your pedals to have the same amount of pedal when you push them down. Manual suggests that there should be 1 inch of play. So I'll show you here, say it's at 4 right now, and you push it in and it's at the 5. That's good, and both of the pedals should be about there. They should be about at the 1 inch mark. So you can see that both of my pedals are correct there, and you can even put this part in and move them together if you want to. So our brakes are adjusted. Now we're ready to add oil. You can see that my drawbar is hooked back up, and we're ready to add the gear lube in here. I'm just using 90 weight gear lube. I'm going to fill it up. It'll take quite a bit of gear lube, as when we removed this, we nearly drained all the gear lube out of there. So I'm going to squeeze this in here until it reaches that level. Okay, I can see that it's up here to where my nozzle is, and so we're going to put the plug back in here. There we go, and we'll tighten it up with a wrench. Okay, I've got the fender on. Now our next step will be to put the wheel back on. You can see that the wheel is back onto my tractor. It was loaded with chloride, so it was really heavy. I had some help with that step, which you would probably want to do as well. Now I'm going to start the tractor up. I'll drive forward a little bit so that we can see how the brakes work. nice. Those brakes work properly. I hope that this video helped you put a stop to your brake problems as well.